Will the Big Ten revamp their conference championship weekend? So, if you follow Pete Nakos of On3, he was reporting on this. I believe it was Friday, maybe Saturday. I think it was Friday, though. He was reporting on the fact that the SEC, not the fact, the thinking of the SEC and the Big Ten possibly going to revamping their conference championship weekend. They are apparently saying, well, these, conference championship games that are kind of meaningless, let's not get rid of those. Let's actually add more games, and make it a bigger deal. Which, sure, but the basically the way it would work out is your number one would play your number two, your number three would play your what is it? Your number six, or
Six.
your six,
Yeah.
and then your number four would play your number five. So if this came out last year, it would have been Oregon versus Penn State, Indiana versus Iowa, and then Ohio State versus Illinois. And both Oregon and Penn State would get in. Those are your top two. And then the winner of Indiana, Iowa, and Ohio State, Illinois, those two winners would then get into playoffs. So they're essentially playing games for the playoffs. I don't like the idea of the Big Ten having playing games. I don't think you need it. I don't think that it makes any sense. I think that it's in a way just trying to make conference championship weekend more exciting. And I mean, sure, maybe it does, but I don't think you bend to the will of the Big 12 and the ACC for this. I think you make those teams play on conference championship weekend. You say, earn it. Because the Big Ten and the SEC are, quite frankly, just too strong for that. What do you think of the idea, Zach?
It's funny. We're like disagreeing a lot tonight. I kind of like the idea, if I'm honest. Now, I hate it if there's no wild card spots because I think that would be the deal breaker for me. If it's a 16 team playoff that they expand to, then I love it. If it's 14 and there's like one wild card spot, which I think it would be, it's either one or two wild card spots with a 14 team, then it's a no go for me because I think part of the problem with the play-in game is like Ohio State's a really good example. Like everybody knew that they were, at least from a talent perspective, one of the best teams. And then you're going to make them play another game where if they lose, they're probably out, which you know I would say if those were the rules, I'd be like, well, yeah, they're out. They lost. And at that point, they lost to Illinois. And it's like, okay, like Illinois deserves to be in. Um, but I would like it if there is, for the teams that have an extra game, that are forced to play an extra game, like kind of a safety net there. But I do like, what's the whole point of this playoff? It's aside from determining a true champion, it's to expand access. Well, what a better way to expand access to a team like Illinois, who is, we just saw the committee completely disregard them in the world of three lost teams, but they get a shot. Like they'd get a shot in this model, and say they upset Ohio State because they're still down off of what happened against their rival. Well, then all of a sudden Illinois gets to say they were in the playoff. And so I like it from that perspective if there are wild cards to be a safety net to the teams that are forced to play. But that would be my main condition.
I hear what you're saying. I just like to me, I don't understand why the Big Ten can't say let's have Illinois and Iowa play the second place and third place ACC teams, right? Like, why are we making them play the third and fourth place Big Ten teams? Like, if you're the Big Ten, you have all the power here. You can make the ACC and the Big 12 do whatever you want. And like, I get it. People don't like this kind of stuff because it's not the way college football was the way before, and I get that. I'm by saying this stuff, like, I'm not saying that I'm advocating it and I want college football to be this way. I'm just saying if you are the Big Ten and you treat yourself as the big bad kids on the block and you can do whatever you want, which I think the Big Ten needs to start doing because that's what the SEC does, and I think that's what the Big Ten essentially needs to start doing if they want to start gaining the respect of AP voters and everything else. Like, then you go out there and you say, actually, our third and fourth place teams are going to be in the playoffs. Your second and third place teams, ACC and Big 12, you're going to actually have to play a play-in game versus the fifth and sixth teams in the Big 10. Like, could you imagine Illinois versus SMU? That'd be a great matchup.
Yeah. So my pushback there, because I hear what you're saying. The last thing I want is for the Big Ten to do what the SEC does. And I get why, like, because the Big Ten does hold, I think they do hold the most power, even though I think there's more SEC bias.
Yeah,
and
they hold the most money, which is the most power.
Yeah, Big Ten holds the most, but I would like my preference. This is my, again, in an ideal world, I would like the Big Ten to use that power to actually create equity amongst the conferences, which is not what the SEC has done. And I think we've seen the Big Ten do that in the past. I mean, that's how they operate as a conference, right? Like Ohio State, we've always argued like Ohio State should throw their weight around more. And it's like, they do throw their weight around, but in ways that are frustrating to Ohio State fans sometimes, because they make sure that Purdue is just as protected as Ohio State. And I actually find that admirable. And so I think my pushback would be, I think that actually might go against the kind of the foundation of who the Big Ten is as an organization, is to kind of throw the ACC and the Big 12 under the bus. If they have to, they'll do it. But I think from a sport perspective, I think that's a bad idea. For the Big Ten, it'd be great. But I think from a sport, yeah.
Yeah, and like that's what I was trying to say when I was saying like I don't necessarily want this. Like as a college football fan, that would be absolutely awful. I'm not saying I want this. But if you're the Big Ten, like the days of being Mr. Nice Guy is over. You know, I mean, we talked about it with the hiring the coaches, right? There's been a shift in how the Big Ten hires their coaches and going after each other's coaches and stuff like that. It is more SEC like now because there is more money to be made, and programs like, you know, are wanting to make the playoffs. I mean, USC and Nebraska is thinking about making the playoffs, and they just both went 7-6 last year. So, like, you have this thought here. So and also too, like Doreen brings it up. She's an Ohio State fan. She says so Ohio State benefited by not playing the extra game. That's another thing I'm thinking about here. Why would I want Ohio State and Indiana to play an extra game when I could just force Illinois and Iowa, or force, SMU and who was third place? Miami? Force SMU and Miami to play Illinois and Iowa. Like, could you imagine like how much more fun that would be to see an SMU versus Illinois and an Iowa versus Miami, rather than seeing Iowa play Indiana and Ohio State play Illinois? I mean, neither of those teams played each other last year, but they could have, and it would have just been a rematch of what we saw before.
Yeah. I don't know. I still don't know if I like, I hear what you're saying. I don't know if I can get on board with it, because I think if the Big Ten wants to play hardball with any conference, I would play it with the SEC. I don't like the idea of playing it with the ACC and the Big 12, but that's me.
I agree with you, because I dislike the SEC, but financially, like, you have to play hardball with the ACC and the Big 12. Like, those are your ops. Right now, the Big 10 and the SEC are buddy-buddy.
Yeah.
Because they're the two most powerful. Which I hate too, but it is what it is.
I'll just say, would you get rid of conference championship games, at least in the SEC and the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going anywhere because they make too much money. But I mean, if I had the option to, I would.
Yeah.
They don't do anything for you. I mean, I told you what my option would be. My option would be everybody plays on conference championship weekend, and you play the team that is close, like that is right next to you in the standings. So 1 plays 2, 2 plays 3, 4 plays 5, but you have an extra bye week during the season. And so you count that as part of the season, and there would be tiebreakers broken because 1 is playing 2, 3 is playing 4, 5 is playing 6, and those are also epic games. Like, people would not be complaining about Indiana's schedule last year if Indiana was forced to play, I guess it would have been Ohio State again. But
Yep.
imagine if it was somebody else. Imagine if Ohio State doesn't lose to Michigan. Haha, I get it. But like they would have played Penn
Yeah.
State instead.
That would have been a heck of a
And
matchup too.
exactly. So I'd be more in favor of that. Then you actually get games that are, like have to be there. But yeah. Anyway,